Hey guys, Kane here. I've got another 2v2 here for you. It's going to be between myself and Cicero against Ivan D and Lynx here on the map Eye of Horus, which is a pretty big map. It's actually one of the larger maps in the 1v1 pool. Going to be a 2v2 like I mentioned here. I'm going to be playing with Cicero and it should be Ivan D and Lynx against the two of us. It looks like myself and Cicero have a pretty good advantage here, at least judging by the LO values. I find that Ivan D is actually a stronger player than myself, and Lynx, as we saw earlier, was no slouch. Cicero77, I'm actually not familiar with whatsoever. I actually don't think I've played with him on a team, except maybe in the large team games where you don't really know exactly who your teammates are, but it's certainly not someone I've ever coordinated with before. And of course, as we'll see, teamwork is one of the larger factors in deciding a 2v2 game, so all that being said, let's just jump right in here. Cicero is going to be opening with the Cloakybot factory. I myself will choose the light vehicle factory. We're going to have split starting positions here. I'll start in the far west, he'll start in the far east. Conversely, we're going to see Ivan D here with the red Cloakybot factory in the east, and then I forget the player, Lynx in the yellow jump jet factory here in the central starting position. So they're going for a stronger position on the right side of the map and the middle as well, whereas I chose to have stronger flanked positions, and then my theory is that if we both expand out here and then head towards the center, we can create a stronger perimeter that way. I mean, we'll just have to see how it plays out. I think that with starting positions like this, where you have two players on one side, leaving one side completely undefended, this is a great place to break through, and unfortunately for them, the stronger player on our team, that is myself, had the starting position opposite to it. Seen some early jump jet play, taking out my darts. So I got the scout that there was a jump jet player over here somewhere, and then once I saw these glaives engaging as well, yeah, I tried to help him out. Tell him to line move his glaives a little bit better, because, I mean, of course, they do work much better when line moved rather than point moved. I don't think he actually got the message in the end, and at this point I was a little bit frustrated, but, I mean, that's just the way small teams is. You know, sometimes you'll get a really good player, or someone who's, like, strong with 1v1 and understands micro and that sort of thing, and, I mean, sometimes you get someone who's just going to use up your metal. And that's, I mean, kind of the way it went. I don't mean to talk any smack about Cicero, because he did end up pulling his own weight here, so and holding his position. But it was pretty clear that I would be doing the majority of the work, which is fine, sort of to be expected in, you know, a disorganized small teams room. Both teams right now just sort of positioning and trying to stake out their claims. I'm actually rushing to establish sort of a front line here with my light vehicles. This actually left me vulnerable to Lynx coming through with his pyros and then sort of jumping over this hill and hanging back into my base. I was aware of that the whole time, but I didn't really expect it to happen, given Lynx is a sort of newer player and not too experienced in the 1v1 scene. You can see here he's bunching up his pyros and idling them outside of his factory. This, of course, needs to be used more aggressively to come up here to the north and raid us out. There's a lot of openings here on Cicero's end, and you'll see these glaives coming in here from Ivan D. Going to be taking out this metal extractor for essentially free. Just a moment here, and even though they're dancing with that commander, they're still not taking much damage. These glaives are going to head back to the base away from the front line, which is going to leave a poor defensive perimeter up there on the front. These glaives are actually able to win with the retreat micro, and this glaive even makes it to the heroic position. A few more glaives now heading in from Ivan D, and my teammate starts to feel a ton of pressure, and I feel really bad. I wasn't paying enough attention to this. I was actually just focusing on the macro and expanding, and then of course I have to deal with this glaive coming in to raid me out as well. I believe I catch this glaive here and I just turn tail with my constructor and say, get out of there, you know, don't waste your time. Boy, pretty strong force of glaives coming in here from Ivan D. It looks like Cicero was able to hold him off fairly well, just one glaive left over, so he's not able to push into the main base. I don't understand exactly why Ivan D was pushing so hard against that front, given that there was the defender and then a pretty large force of glaives here. They're going to be focus firing down on my on the weaker side of my team, which is again a very common strategy and something I need to look out for more in the future, because I definitely left him a little bit high and dry here. 4 pyros now coming into the heart of his base. Thankfully, Lynx is not that great at pyro micros, actually letting his pyros slam each other with their flamethrowers, so a bit of luck there on Cicero's part. You can see right there, actually all 3 of those pyros were killed by their friendly pyros, so even though pyros are invulnerable to the afterburn damage, they're still very much vulnerable to the flame jet damage that comes out from the main weapon. So that factory does end up going down. These glaives coming up behind it to clean up whatever's left. And at this point, I actually thought that my commander was, remember that my ally's commander was dead. I didn't see him tucked in this corner back here. I thought that the factory was down and the commander was dead as well. Trying to poke in a little bit with these Scorchers, trying to relieve the pressure on them somewhat, but didn't work out too very well. Sending just one of my Scorchers there to defend them. I want to keep my own perimeter pretty well defended. Militarily, I have 2.6k military out on the field, which is actually the largest of any of the players. Just because I've had no engagement at this point, I've been able to mass units pretty well. And this big group of Pyros here is not going to play out very well against these Scorchers for me. Looks like they're going to take it down with absolutely no casualties whatsoever, getting the burn damage off. And I'm not really sure what my plan was against these Pyros. I don't really have a good answer within the light vehicle factory as far as I'm aware of. I think I ended up just using a lot of Scorcher Micro and Scorcher Dives to take care of that. Here my Constructors caught out of position. These Glaives are going to raid it out and take down the Constructor, come through here, and probably take out all 4 of these Metal Extractors as well. So, yeah, not a great position. I was definitely pretty demoralized here. Trying to do what I can with the Scorcher, but Ivan D is, of course, very good micro. He's a very strong 1v1 player. Often beats me in 1v1, like I mentioned earlier. So I really just didn't feel like I had much hope. But that's just the way it is. I'm gonna have these Glaives ultimately coming in. They're gonna be heading west and start attacking my own position here. If I recall correctly, I started throwing down some stack defenses to preempt these Glaives from coming into my main base at least. I see a couple of Constructors. Oh, that's right. And then I start the resign vote because I actually thought that my ally's commander was dead. And he sort of agrees with me that probably not too useful to keep on. But I actually voted 2 once I realized that his commander was still up. He had rebuilt a factory and a caretaker as well. He had a ton of reclaim in his base as well to keep going. So I'm actually going to back out of that resign vote and say, yeah, let's go ahead and press forward. Ultimately, I'm glad I did because it turned out to be a better game than I thought it would be. Seeing these Glaives using their advantage up on the hill to fire down at these Scorchers with pretty much no contest whatsoever. Unfortunately for the southern team here, Lynx never really expanded out to the west. I think this was the main thing that kept them from winning the game immediately with that push, because if he had expanded out to the west, oh wow, look at the hang time on that Pyro Corpse. That was pretty impressive. But anyway, if he had expanded out to the west, he would have had significantly more economy to work with, and neither of us really contesting the center either. Probably something we could both improve on. And look at all of the reclaim here in the northern parts of the base. Looks like, wow, almost 2k in reclaim, which is certainly a ton to work with. At this point, I switched to Ravager Leveler, which I figured was my only hope since those Pyros had been tearing my Scorchers apart. They're still going to get kited out by the Pyros, I believe, although the Ravagers might be just a little bit faster, close enough to keep up anyway. My idea here was to essentially build a really strong force, and with really good attrition, I could slowly push through to the front. And then I was also making sure to continue expanding with my commander as well. Ivan D is doing most of the heavy lifting as far as expansion goes. Lynx not really doing his share of the work, in my opinion, to head out to the west here. These Glaives are going to meet up with my Ravager Leveler Ball. Not going to have very much luck there at all. It looks like my teammate Cicero is going to be using Glaives to raid out these defenders, which is really good, actually. I'm pretty impressed that he was able to take down this fortified position. They do go down to this group of Pyros here, but what are you going to do? At least he stopped the defender creep into his base. Does need to be a little bit more aggressive here to attack this Constructor and keep it from reclaiming as much as it was. These Pyros not used as effectively as they could be. Being point jumped, of course, you can use a line move with the jump command just like you can with others by simply dragging with the command that you issue there. A little bit of fireworks going off here. My Ravagers coming down to take out a lot of the energy economy from Ivan D, which is built up along the central mechs. So going to be engaging the Pyros here, and this is where the tide really begins to turn. I have a lot of pressure bearing down on Lynx's base to try and counter the pressure that Ivan D has been applying to Cicero the entire game. It looks like a bunch of Zeus now coming through here, trying to slow creep through. At the same time, my Leveler is going to be cleaning up these Pyros pretty handily. Not much trouble at all. Taking quite a bit of damage in the process, but ultimately winning out the engagement. Now going to be shutting down even more energy economy. I figured that was, what, 7 plus another 8. That's like 15 solar collectors I took out from Ivan D, and still not enough to make him e-stall, which was my ultimate plan. I didn't realize that there was a geothermal power plant back here. I'm going to dive into the LLT now and try and shut down the factory as well. Ivan D is forced to respawn by sending out a large group of Glaives, but directly into my riot units. That's not an excellent choice. My Levelers are pretty low on health, but they're going to do a nice job against these Glaives, which they almost always do, especially once the Glaives are bunched up. Ivan D is actually going to start trying to cut over to head off any reinforcements that I have coming in So that's certainly a wise decision. I am able to get the factory taken down, which leaves Lynx essentially with just his commander, and now Ivan D is forced to handle all of the production for the entire team, which is very unfortunate because, well, of course, there's only going to be one type of units. They're going to be heading essentially in one direction. These Zeuses haven't really done as good of a job as Ivan D was probably hoping. Cicero was able to keep them at bay with a couple of Rockos and some pretty heavy stack defensives, which is totally fine, man. Just as long as you stay alive, please, and take some of the damage. I have made sure to re-expand out here using the extra constructor I have. I'm also using primarily constructors to assist my factory. And for some reason, I've bunched a group of slashers back here behind my base. I'm not sure why exactly I did that, but just a mistake I made. I'm also sending a small, I guess, team of Ravagers, one Ravager, one Leveler, to raid out the southwestern area just in case it has been expanded. This is the point where I realized it hadn't, and that we were in a pretty good position since I had made sure to expand pretty fully across the map and was going to head down to take the central area as well. At this point, I tried the same trick. I'm going to head directly into Ivan D's stream of incoming reinforcements to cut that off as well, to prevent any more pressure being applied to my ally here, which I think worked out very well. I'm going to take out this fortified position, making sure to take out the metal extractor, I believe. There we go. The metal extractor was down as well. I cut off that stream of glaives. Now there's just 2 glaives, 2 Zeuses over here, and a ton of stacked defenses and military to help defend. I'm also flanking from the other side. Looks like that light vehicle factor is pretty quickly built up by Lynx. I'm sending my Ravager Leveler over here to scout, sort of see what's going on. This large mass needs to pull back. Not getting much more profit here from attacking these solar collectors, and certainly not by getting free damage taken from the glaives. I'm making sure to continue producing units, slashers, levelers, ravagers, looks like one of each on repeat. Going to be driving a little bit into Ivan D's base, but this is much more heavily fortified, in my opinion, so probably less profitable to attack it. I should have focused down on this LLT a bit more with my forces and tried to regroup a bit stronger, but these Rockos were starting to hold me at bay. In fact, at this point, I just turned tail and run, since he does have a bit of a hard counter to my units in the Rockos. I am able to deal with the glaives pretty much no problem, but those Rockos, of course, having the range that they do, can pretty easily hold me off. I'm also setting up just a really light perimeter here with my commander. This is actually very vulnerable, and if Lynx had pushed out at all, this would have taken down my commander and broken a hole directly in my perimeter that could have been essentially walked right through with even just a couple of pyros. The light vehicle factory is now complete. We're going to see some Scorchers coming up. Maybe too many Caretakers. I don't think Lynx needed quite this many. But the stack defenses they had there worked out very well and kept me from entering into his base. And like I mentioned, these Rockos are keeping my vehicles totally at bay. I can't do anything against them, so I need to pull back. I actually should have built some Scorchers to come in and try to dive through them, which would have worked at least a little bit better. But ultimately, I'm just going to regroup and then try and try to make a game-ending push directly down into Lynx's base here. And we see that there's continuing slow creep from the Rockos, trying to head up north here. There's a Stardust raised onto a platform. Always interesting seeing a pretty large ball of constructors here to do whatever work they can. Cicero has been building up a pretty light defensive army here, but I mean, ultimately it has worked out pretty well. He is e-stalling, looks like he has been for quite a while now. This large force in the center here is going to be bearing down pretty heavily. How much metal is there? You know, all of this put together, 2.6k. Wow, which is like essentially Strider level economy now, hammering down into Lynx's base. If I recall correctly, Lynx actually is able to hold this fairly well, but this does end up being the final push, if I recall. And yeah, you can see here where he's grouped up his units, which is never a good thing to do. It's making him, giving him a really hard time maneuvering, given that they're all bunched up like that. He does line spread them out a little bit, but then I begin to move in. Looks like a couple of Stingers came up, and these Stingers are, of course, really good against my light vehicles, especially Ravagers and Levelers. But at the same time, I just have this wall of Scorchers, which I'm going to use to pressure down along the side. And at this point, I'm streaming out Levelers and Ravagers from the west. My teammate Cicero was doing an excellent job holding the line here, pushing a little bit too aggressively into this elevated Stardust, but I don't think it really matters that much. I do go for the air switch in the end, which is maybe a little bit unnecessary, but I decided that I would really need to think of something better to take out these Stingers. 2 Stingers, I mean, was just giving me so much problems, and I was dumping a ton of reclaim into Lynx's base, and if he had been a stronger or more experienced player, he could have taken advantage of that to counter push along the western side and then ultimately win the game. I'm just really impressed here by how well Cicero has been able to hold. It looks like pure Rocco spam coming out from Ivan D, which is, I mean, just a little bit lazy. I don't think it's the right answer here, especially given the glaives that are out on the field from Cicero. I'm continuing to hammer down and trying to just whittle down Lynx as much as I can, but really I'm trying to focus on this air switch pretty heavily because I know that the Ravens are going to have essentially no problem at all taking out these Stingers here. So I'm going to be just stalling a little bit, trying to kite his units as much as I can, building up a defensive perimeter here in case he tries to counter push, and just keeping tabs on my buddy, trying to make sure that he's not overwhelmed by these Rockos. He has been holding his own really well for the last, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so against Ivan D, who is the stronger player. He absolutely had the harder position. He lost his factory early on, but after he built this perimeter, I think he did a really good job, especially once Ivan D got so lazy, you know, and just spamming Rockos like this, it's really not creative at all. And if you're not paying any attention to what your enemy's building, I just don't understand the logic behind it. You know, I feel like he could have done a lot better if he had been more intentional in his unit composition, but he could have been drunk or feeling lazy, which is both very common in 0K. And actually, I do get stunned out by the Faraday there, so I'm not able to do as well against these Stingers as I'd hope. I actually don't even take any of them out. Wow, how embarrassing. But at the same time, still massing Ravagers, Levelers. Ivan D seems pretty convinced that he's going to have a breakout moment here. I, on the other hand, am not so convinced. I probably should have built some napalm bombers to try and napalm these pretty vulnerable line of Rockos. How much, wow, 1.8k in Rockos here that's been massing up, but still not able to push through. Not even through the small group of just the commander and his Stardust. It's, I'm a little bit bewildered here. Ivan D was certainly not showing the level of play that he typically exhibits in 1v1. Certainly understandable. Teams is a bit more of a relaxing game that we try to play. And, yeah, just pretty much the same thing that's been going on for the last few minutes. I even get crazy and decide to build a geothermal pretty far ahead here. There's a ton of Ravens coming up now. It looks like I'm going to be making a second pass pretty soon. Lots of AA now coming up from Lynx. I probably should have just switched out of Ravens entirely after that first push. I'm going to move in with my army here, take out essentially all of Lynx's army, and then just heading right back right after I get that taken care of, because I still don't want to be attacking into his pork. Unfortunately, these Stingers don't have any like critical weak points that I can exploit. You know, it's not like a DDM where you can take out the pylon that powers it and then disable the long-range weapon. I really just have to do it the old-fashioned way with 3 of them right there. It's really hard to take care of. I mean, they're able to take out, you know, they would take out this entire group of light vehicles in essentially 3 volleys, which is not very much at all. Very big problem coming in on the central area here from these Rockos. I'm not too sure what I'd do to deal with them. It's definitely a big deal. Oh, wow, I have a ton of Ravagers and Levelers just idling outside my factory. Forgot to waypoint those, which is certainly a rookie mistake. Probably enough there to overwhelm this force. But I'm actually going ahead with the bombers to try and bomb these out. Making sure to use spread attack rather than the normal A area move, which is where you just hold control while you give the circular A attack, which spreads out the bombs over each of the cloaky bots here. So that will bomb them out a lot more efficiently than just the standard A attack like I mentioned. And then now I have my Ravagers and Levelers coming in to clean house. They're going to do a pretty good job of that. And then after that, I mean, I'm pretty much open to head down to the southeast here. I should be switching out of Raven production pretty soon here, knowing that the enemy is aware of my Raven switch. I'm just going to use the Ravens I already have on the field to sort of accentuate my army, and then try to exploit the fact that both of these players have been building AA pretty heavily, and in fact, Ivan D is now switched out entirely against into an air factory. Sorry, got a little bit distracted there. So he's going to have essentially nothing on the ground. Once I catch wind of this, I'm just going to push right down into the heart of his base. These Rockos are going to try and skirm these Ravagers as well as they can, but ultimately the Ravagers are pretty fast, and the right units behind them will clean up any plays that manage to leak through into the line. Lynx has done essentially nothing for the last 5 minutes or so, other than build a defensive military directly outside of his base and a bunch of Stingers and anti-air. Really unfortunate. I think Ivan D could have won this game with a little bit stronger ally. I was very fortunate to get Cicero, who was able to hold his own and actually wanted to continue on after his factory was destroyed, which is a bit of a rare quality in a lot of players. And just continuing to sort of shove this down the throats of my opponent. At this point, having taken the center metal extractor positions and a fairly forward position here, and making sure to take all of the metal extractors in our territory, I mean, the economic advantage is just so huge at this point that really victory is inevitable. In fact, I can speed it up through here, but as far as things that the southern team could have done better, I mean, first of all, expanding out to the west here, Lynx, I mean, you absolutely have to do that. It needs to be a little bit more intentional. Oh, absolutely needs to be better in the way that he micros the pyros. As we saw earlier, a lot of those pyros went down to friendly fire, especially when he was raiding out Cicero early on in the game. Like I mentioned, those flame jets will hurt allied pyros, so you need to be really careful and definitely line moving those as much as possible. And, I mean, Ivan D, I feel like he got a little bit lazy, like I mentioned, with the pure Rocco spam. Didn't make a lot of sense, especially given the number of clades that were out on the field for my buddy here. He was able to keep those Roccos at bay, no problem, despite being pretty significantly lower LO value than Ivan D. So, yeah, there's that. I mean, easy ways to win is, you know, pretty consistent macro, superior micro, good switches, helping out your teammates. I should have done more of that in the early game. I did manage to get back on the ball, you know, like when I cut off the stream of reinforcements coming in from Ivan D to help out my buddy who was in a lot of trouble there. And then making sure to apply pressure whenever my ally was under pressure to try and take whatever pressure I could off of him and put it onto my stronger military. It was much stronger just because I had expanded so much, you know, more quickly. And of course, I didn't get my factory taken out, which always helps. But anyway, I really enjoyed that. If there's anything I missed, as always, just let me know in the comments. I'll catch you guys next time.